The letter was sitting among a pile of mail. I had almost tossed aside just another white envelope with the blue Fairfield Trust Bank logo printed in the corner. I didn't notice it at first. I was too busy sorting through utility bills and local coupons. Only after finishing my second cup of coffee did I glance at it and feel something odd in my gut. I had no business with Fairfield Trust Bank. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the envelope and read the first few lines. My stomach dropped. "Dear Mrs. Whitaker, this is a reminder of your overdue mortgage payment." I froze. The letter claimed I owed over $7,000 for the second payment on a mortgage of $950,000. According to the letter, if I didn't bring the account current within 2 weeks, foreclosure proceedings would begin. I blinked. I reread the line. Then again, it didn't make sense. I was 70 years old, a retired librarian, a widow for over a decade. The modest cottage on Maplewood Lane, where my late husband and I had lived for 40 years, had been paid off long ago. Why would I, a quiet woman with no debt, suddenly owe nearly $1 million? I picked up the phone and dialed the number on the letter. After a long wait, a young woman answered. "Fairfield Trust. How may I assist you?" "This is Martha Whitaker," I said, my voice trembling. "I received a mortgage statement. There's been a mistake. I've never taken out a loan from your bank. Please hold for a moment, Mrs. Whitaker." As she placed me on hold, I stared out the kitchen window, past the garden Harold once tended so meticulously. Everything felt normal, quiet, peaceful, but inside me, something had cracked. When the voice came back on the line, it confirmed my fear. "According to our records, you took out a 30-year mortgage in March to purchase property at 118 Lakeside Circle, valued at $950,000. We have your signed agreement, passport copy. Social Security and tax forms on file." I felt like I was suffocating. Someone had used my name, my documents, my identity, and I had no idea who, but I was going to find out. The moment I hung up the phone, it rang again. Julia. My daughter's name flashed on the screen, and for a second I considered not answering. But I did. Maybe, just maybe, I needed to hear something familiar. "Mom, it's Zoe's birthday today," Julia began, her voice brisk, skipping any greeting. "You didn't forget, did you? We're meeting at the Willow Room at 3, and please don't wear that green cardigan. You know the one. It's a restaurant, not your garden." Zoe, my granddaughter, 12 today. I hadn't forgotten. I'd already wrapped a small silver bracelet with a star charm. Something meaningful and delicate, something I thought she might like. "I remember," I said, keeping my tone even. "But Julia, I received something this morning. A letter from a bank about a mortgage I never signed." "Not again, Mom," she sighed. "If it's another credit card ad, just throw it away. You don't have to open every piece of junk mail." "It's not junk, this is serious. Someone took out a loan in my name, a mortgage for almost $1 million. There was a pause, then a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Mom, come on. Who on earth would give that kind of loan to a retiree? You must have misunderstood." "I didn't. I spoke to the bank. They have all my personal information, my signature. They think I bought a house at the lake." There was another silence. Then Julia's voice shifted. Too calm, too careful. "Mom, are you feeling okay today? Did you take your blood pressure medication?" "Don't talk to me like I'm losing my mind," I said firmly. "I know what I read, I know what I heard. This is identity theft, and I'm going to the police." "The police?" Julia sounded genuinely alarmed. "Oh my God, Mom, please don't make a scene. I'll stop by after work. Just don't do anything until I get there, okay?" I agreed, but something in her reaction struck a chord deep inside me. She wasn't surprised. She was nervous, and that told me more than any letter ever could. By the time I arrived at the Willow Room that afternoon, my mind was spinning with unanswered questions. The place was all glass and chrome, the kind of restaurant where the portions were small and the price tags large. Dylan was already there with his wife, Candace, and their 2 teenagers. My son barely looked up when I arrived. "Mom," he said, his eyes narrowing, "your hair's sticking up again on the left side." "Nice to see you too, Dylan," I replied, brushing my hair back and forcing a smile. Candace gave a polite nod. The kids mumbled a distracted hello, eyes glued to their phones. I took the empty seat, wondering not for the first time how I had raised such distant people. "Where's Julia?" I asked. "Running late," Dylan said, glancing at his watch. "Work thing, something about the Randall family situation." Julia worked in Child Protective Services. She often spoke about saving children from unstable homes, though sometimes I wondered if she saw her own childhood as one of those cases. Half an hour later, she arrived flawless, loud, and exactly on cue. Her husband, Mark, trailed behind her, and Zoe, the birthday girl, floated in, wearing a dress that looked like it belonged in a fashion catalog. Grandma, you came, Zoe said, sounding more surprised than pleased. I wouldn't miss it, sweetheart. I handed her the little gift box. She took it without opening it. Thanks, she said flatly, already turning to show Marilyn, her cousin, something on her phone. I watched as my gift was placed on the table without a second glance. Mom, Julia leaned over and whispered, what exactly did that letter say? You didn't believe me earlier, I whispered back. But it's real, a loan for a house I didn't buy, and the address listed. It's a new build in Lakeside Circle. Julia stiffened but quickly recovered. Mom, salad or soup? She asked aloud, her tone bright, her smile fake. The rest of lunch passed in polite tension. Every now and then I caught Julia and Dylan exchanging glances that said far more than their words. When I returned home, I sat down at my computer. I wasn't great with technology, but I could manage a simple search. I typed in the address from the letter, 118 Lakeside Circle, Concord. Up came photos of a sprawling modern home with floor-to-ceiling windows, stone accents, and a dock stretching into the lake. It was stunning, and it was purchased in March, the same month someone forged my name. That evening, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, the screen still showing that house, its glossy white siding, those gleaming windows reflecting the lake, the house someone bought in my name. And then there was Julia's brand-new SUV parked in my driveway just hours earlier. She hadn't mentioned trading in her old car. She hadn't mentioned a new house either. But it all clicked now. Julia had always been ambitious, always reaching for something bigger. She knew the system. She worked in it. She had access. She had my documents. And she thought I'd be too slow, too confused to ever find out. She was wrong. The next morning, I pulled out the old city directory and found the name I was looking for, Rowan Gates, elder law specialist. Her card read, protecting your rights when others try to take them. I dialed her. Number, half expecting to be brushed off or placed on a weeks-long wait list. Instead, the receptionist scheduled me for that very afternoon. Rowan's office was located in a modest brick building in downtown Concord. Inside it felt more like a home than a law firm. Plants on every windowsill, sunlight pouring through sheer curtains. Rowan herself stood when I entered. She was in her 60s, wore a navy suit, and had the steady kind of presence that made you feel you weren't alone. Mrs. Whitaker, she said, shaking my hand firmly. Please sit, tell me everything. I did, from the letter to the phone call, to the party, to Julia's tight-lipped visit. I told her about the house, the forged signature, and the new SUV. When I finished, Rowan tapped her pen lightly on the desk. What you've described is identity theft, and a pretty sophisticated one at that, complicated by the fact that the suspect is your own daughter. I nodded slowly. What happens now? We have 3 options, she said. Report it to the police, file a civil suit, or try to settle privately. And if you do nothing, you risk foreclosure, late fees, lawsuits, and eventually losing your home. I looked out the window, then back at her. Then I guess, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. We'd better do something. 3 days later, I got a call from Audrey, my closest friend from my post office days. She sounded out of breath. Martha, you might want to sit down, she said. My niece Paige works part-time at Crystal Grove Catering. Guess whose event she's working this Saturday? I didn't respond. Julia's housewarming party, Audrey continued. She reserved it, under her husband's company name. Lakeside Events, but it's her. It's your daughter. Paige said it's a full setup. Cocktails, champagne, duo, 40 phones, guests, at the house. Your house, technically. She hadn't invited me, not even a phone call. I thanked Audrey and hung up, and then I called Rowan. She's throwing a party in that house, I said. This weekend. There was a pause. Do you know the exact time and address? I do. In that case, Rowan said slowly, we could arrange for the court bailiff to serve her the lawsuit, notice there, at the party. Is that? Yes, it's perfectly legal. The bailiff can serve the notice anywhere the defendant can be found. And if I want to be there? Rowan hesitated. It will cause a scene. I know, Martha, she said gently. Are you sure this isn't about revenge? I thought for a moment. No, I want her to see that. I'm not the invisible old woman she thinks I am. I want her to see that I won't be silenced. Saturday arrived. Clear skies, perfect weather for a lakeside celebration. I stood in front of the mirror in a dark blue dress with a crisp white collar. Neat, understated. I curled my hair and added a touch of lipstick. I didn't look like someone defeated. I looked like someone ready to be seen. I took a cab to a small cafe near Lakeside Circle where Rowan waited with the bailiff, Mr. Elliot Nash, a tall man in a crisp suit with a calm, capable demeanor. He outlined the plan. He would enter as a catering staff member and serve Julia the notice inside the party. "You can stay outside," Rowan offered. "Or come in." "I'm going in," I said. "She deserves to know I'm not hiding." The three of us walked the short distance to 118 Lakeside Circle. From the street, the house looked like a magazine cover, soft lights glowing from inside, people in cocktail attire, mingling on the back patio, laughter echoing faintly. We rang the bell. A young woman in catering black opened the door. "Extra staff?" she asked. "Yes," Elliot nodded. "I'm with Crystal Grove, and this is the quality inspector." "Come in." The house smelled of new wood and money. Music played softly. I recognized at least two neighbors. Julia was in the center of it all, holding a glass of champagne. When she saw me, her smile froze. "Mom?" And then she saw Mr. Nash. "Mrs. Julia Caldwell?" he asked evenly. "Yes?" "I'm here on behalf of Concord District Court. You're being served with a civil suit for fraud and forgery." The room went silent. And for once, my daughter had nothing to say. The room stood in stunned silence. Julia held the legal documents like they were foreign objects, her knuckles turning white as she clutched the pages. Her champagne glass trembled slightly, the golden liquid rippling with every small shake of her hand. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" Mark, her husband, stepped forward, his voice rising. "No joke," I said calmly. "Your wife used my name to take out a mortgage for this house, without my knowledge, without my consent." "That's ridiculous," Julia snapped, her voice tight with panic. "You said you'd help. You gave me permission." "Where's the paperwork then?" I asked. "Where's the power of attorney you claim I signed? Why did you forge my signature instead?" Julia's face flushed a deep red. Mark looked at her, eyebrows raised. It was clear now he hadn't known the full story either. "You've embarrassed yourself," Julia hissed, lowering her voice. "And me, in front of everyone." "No," I corrected her. "You embarrassed yourself. I'm just standing up for what's mine." My son Dylan appeared from the side of the room, arms folded. "Come on, Mom, you're making a big deal out of something that could have been solved in private." "Private?" I turned to him. "You knew, didn't you? You knew and you said nothing." He shifted, uncomfortably, not answering. Julia stepped toward me, voice shaking with anger. "Get out, right now." "Gladly," I said. "But before I go, I want to see the house you stole in my name. I think I've earned at least that much." Mark looked horrified. "Wait, this place is in your mother's name?" "Not directly," I replied. "It was bought through a shell company set up under your name, Caldwell Holdings. Nice try at hiding the trail." Guests were slowly backing away, murmuring among themselves, avoiding eye contact. Someone near the kitchen picked up a coat. Others headed for the door. Julia was unraveling, fury written all over her face. But I wasn't there to fight. I was there to be heard. "To anyone listening," I said, "let this be a lesson. Never assume someone's too old or too quiet to stand up for themselves." I turned to leave, then paused. "And Julia," I added without raising my voice, "you've taken enough from me. You won't take my dignity. Ty, too." And with that, I walked out of the house she could no longer hide behind. The lawsuit moved forward quickly. Rowan filed all the necessary paperwork. We had more than enough evidence. A copy of the loan, agreement with a clearly forged signature, my medical records proving I was at St. James Clinic the exact hour, the documents were supposedly signed, and payment records showing that the mortgage had been serviced through Caldwell Holdings, a company set up just 2 months before the purchase. Julia tried to delay, hiring a high-priced attorney from the city. He argued I had given verbal consent, that this was a misunderstanding between family members, but the judge wasn't swayed. A woman in her 70s with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, she had seen too much to fall for theatrics. She listened carefully as Rowan presented each document, each timeline, each piece of proof that pointed not to confusion but premeditation. After the second hearing, the judge looked straight at Julia and said, "This court does not treat elder financial abuse lightly, even when it's committed by family, especially when it's committed by family." She ruled in my favor. The loan was declared void. My name was cleared of any financial responsibility. Julia was ordered to pay $20,000 in moral damages, and the bank, eager to avoid bad publicity, offered an additional settlement of $15,000 for its failure to detect the forgery. The house on Lakeside Circle was seized by the bank. Julia and Mark moved into a small apartment in the northern part of town. Shortly after, Mark filed for divorce. He claimed he'd been kept in the dark about most of the financial decisions and didn't want to be dragged into legal scrutiny. Julia also filed for joint custody of Zoe. As for Dylan, he stopped answering my calls altogether. His wife, Candace, messaged once just to tell me I was no longer welcome to visit their children. "They're too young to be caught up in family scandals," she wrote. I was left alone, no birthday invitations, no holiday calls, no photos of my grandchildren on the fridge, and yet for the first time in years I could breathe. There were no more veiled insults at family dinners, no forced smiles, no sense that I had to shrink myself to be tolerated. I had lost my children, but I had found myself my respect. And as painful as that truth was, it was better than the lie I had lived for far too long, the lie that silence was safer than standing tall. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet at first. I would still walk past the hall table expecting a voicemail light to blink or glance at my phone waiting for Zoe's name to pop up. But they didn't call, and I stopped waiting. Audrey, bless her, became my daily companion. She brought over scones, herbal tea, and updated me on town gossip. One afternoon she looked at me over her cup and said, "Now that you've fought for your dignity, what are you going to do with it?" I laughed, unsure. "I don't know, I've lived my whole life for other people. First Harold, then the kids. Time to live for yourself." I hesitated, unsure how to do that after 70 years. So, Audrey made a plan. She signed us both up for a computer literacy course at the community center. Twice a week, we learned how to use spreadsheets, write emails, and navigate social media. It wasn't easy, but it was ours. And then one evening, Audrey brought out a travel brochure. "Venice," she said, tapping a glossy photo of gondolas gliding down narrow canals. "You once told me you and Harold always wanted to go." "That was a long time ago," I said. "Doesn't mean it's too late." She was right. Thanks to the compensation from the court and for once, no children siphoning my savings, I booked the tickets. 2 weeks in Italy with my best friend. It wouldn't erase what happened, but it would be a beginning, a step toward healing. I didn't know if Zoe would ever understand what happened or if Dylan and Julia would ever speak to me again. Maybe one day, maybe not, but I no longer defined my worth by their approval. I was still a mother, but more than that, I was a woman who had taken back her voice, her name, her power, and that would carry me forward to Venice, to freedom, to the life I finally chose for myself. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we once lived for. And standing up to them doesn't mean you failed as a parent. It means you've finally chosen yourself. Martha's story is a reminder that dignity has no age limit and justice doesn't always come with applause. But when it does come, it's worth everything. If this story moved you or reminded you of your own strength, let us know in the comments. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe because every voice matters and every story deserves to be heard.